Good morning. It's Dr. Bill Williams on the Influencers Podcast. Here we are. Daylight savings time has happened. It's a new look out there. The flowers are blooming down here in Georgia. I'm ready to get started this Monday morning with Tony Paradiso. You're going to enjoy this talk. This is going to be fun. And from Connecticut,
from the
Tony,
Nutmeg
welcome.
State.
What part of Connecticut are you in?
I'm actually in the northeast corner, which they call the quiet corner, for good reason. Not much goes on in this part of the state, and we bought a lake house about 4 years ago, so we're living a semi-retired, quiet, secluded life.
I think you're going after your namesake, Paradise.
Yeah,
living up on the lake is paradise.
It has been very enjoyable. Even though I'm still not a winter person, but with climate change, the winters are getting milder in the Northeast, and living on the lake has been terrific.
Yeah, I'm looking to move to the lake. Being at the retirement period of my life and moving forward with the next step, I'm trying to downsize and find that perfect lake house. So I might have to get some hints from you.
well, I've got experience of buying one.
Find the best and stay with it.
And there are a few tricks that we learned kind of about lake communities. So yeah, I'd be happy to share whatever I learned.
Yeah, lake people are different, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Yeah.
And I think that's not a bad difference either.
Yeah, and our community is a combination of full-time residents and summer residents. So it's interesting. It is a bit of a neighborhood because many of the residents are full-time.
Yeah, you get your peaceful winters and your busy summers on the lake.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about E3, what you're doing in your green energy business. There's a lot of things in green energy that are kind of known and popular, but you're an insider. You've been doing it for a long time. So why don't we start out where you tell us about, how you get started in it, who were the influential people, what inspired you to be a part of the green energy movement?
Well, I got involved in renewable energy about 7 years ago as part of a consulting assignment. It was a turnaround situation for a solar company that had run into some financial problems. And they were in the community solar space, which is it's a very different space, an interesting space that's expanding nationwide. But after I finished that assignment, I decided, I'm at the stage of my career where I've got like one last run. And I liked community solar, and I liked the whole renewable energy space. It's an emerging market. I've participated in several emerging markets throughout my career. They're a lot of fun, very dynamic, constantly changing, very challenging. So it's just an environment I enjoy working in. So I decided to basically finish out my career in renewable energy. And then about a year and a half ago, decided, well, I always take a macro view on things. And I started a social media campaign of just posting videos to LinkedIn mostly on renewable energy and climate change. No specific agenda, just trying to assess where the industry was and where the climate change movement was. And it's exciting because I learn every day because I look at 20 news feeds every morning, and I have a pretty good sense of where the industry's going and what the challenges are. And sadly, a lot of our strategy is misdirected.
Well, I have the same feeling about green energy. As I trust some of it, I don't trust some of it. I enjoy the benefits of some, and I see where some of it may not be cost effective. It just seems like it's just too innovative without having any proof that it's going to survive. It's a good idea, but it hasn't been entered into with great thought. So what are your thinking on the green energy as it is today versus where it needs to be?
Well, so that's always the challenge. And I started my career in technology in the 80s. So we were part of the whole PC revolution. So all the foundation for all the technology you see today, we initiated in the 80s. And one of the challenges with any new technology, and the green tech, clean tech space, however you want to refer to it, it's a technology sector. Is initially the technology's always going to be too expensive and take too long to build. That was true of wind and solar 20, 30 years ago. But you continue to invest, you continue to perfect the technology, costs come down, you begin to get economies of scale. So what you're seeing now is massive deployments of primarily solar, but also wind, because those are the most mature technologies and the most cost-effective technologies. The problem is they are not the most efficient technologies. One important thing to consider is our electric grid and electric grids around the world were designed for centralized power generation. Big power plants connected to transmission lines that step the voltage down to eventually go to your home. What we're doing now is attempting to connect a bunch of mini utilities, basically solar and wind utilities, indiscriminately on the grid. And it wasn't designed to do that. And it was also not designed for intermittent power. It was designed for power that runs 24/7. And the intermittency inherent in both wind and solar is a real problem for utility operators because they don't view that as an asset, right? They can only do certain things with it. Battery storage is going to change that a bit, but now you're adding battery storage onto wind and solar in order to make it effective and useful to grid operators. What I like to say is, if we fast forwarded 100 years and I came to you and said, hey, I got this great renewable energy technology. It converts 23% of sunlight into energy and it operates 50% of the time and it's highly land inefficient. How excited would you be? Right? And I think what's going to happen 100 years from now, and we're not going to be around to see it, is they're going to be dismantling a lot of these solar installations in favor of much superior technologies, which may be hydrogen, it may be geothermal, maybe wave energy, it may be a reemergence of nuclear, which I think we prematurely abandoned. So all those technologies today are very expensive and nascent. They're not ready for prime time. But if we don't make the investment in them today, then we're going to be living with wind and solar and all its limitations for many, many years. And that is simply not going to achieve our climate goals.
Well, that's a great overview, and understanding the economy of scale is one of the keys. And you made a critical point of centralization versus decentralization, where it's individual homes, communities adding to the grid versus producing it all in one place and then spread it out among the community.
Yeah, and the grid may ultimately evolve into a more decentralized architecture. There's pros and cons to that. And there is the opportunity for all these tiny utilities, including residential rooftop and even EVs, to become assets that can operate in two ways, right? So there's a movement now where an EV can be an energy storage device to the grid, right? And there are pilot programs where EV owners can sign up and say, okay, I'll let you discharge the battery in my EV in order to either load manage or handle some ancillary service for the utility in exchange for some compensation. So you can envision, somewhere down the road where you've got, thousands of rooftops and thousands of EVs who are all interconnected to the grid and providing services, load balancing, peak demand, and those kinds of things as a resource. We're a long way from that, but you can see that evolving to there. But the challenge is climate change, right? I mean, it's not to evolve the grid. if your number one priority is to keep global warming within a range, then we should have been spending significant amount of money on upgrading the grid, on transmission capacity, on interconnection capabilities in order to achieve the climate goal. Revamping the grid to a decentralized architecture should have been a secondary issue to let's keep global warming under whatever it's going to be. It's not going to be 1.5 degrees C. That ship has sailed. And we better hope that we have not passed the point of no return, because, climate change is the proverbial oil tanker. You don't turn it on a dime. It's going to take decades to solve this problem. And we just better hope that we haven't reached the point in which, we've gone too far.
A couple of decades, even 100 years ago, hydroelectric was in its infancy. People were starting to invest and put it in. They probably said the same thing about hydroelectric. And then the next couple of decades, they said the same thing about nuclear.
Yeah, so every new technology follows the same pattern. It's funny. When I was in high tech, when the Ethernet, and LANs, local area networks, were just first emerging, I can remember we had about 7 consecutive years of the LAN, because all the LAN technology guys would say, well, this is the year that we're going to explode. And this went on for 7 years. And what I've found is basically every new technology takes about 7 years to hit critical mass, and that's, of course, that's a generality, and some move a little faster, some a little slower, but no new technology hits the market and is instantaneous, including AI. Even though AI has hit the consciousness of the world in the last 12 months, the technology's been around for decades, and it hasn't been ready for prime time, nor is it ready for prime time today, but it's getting to the point where it can do some useful things. So when you're looking at climate change, you have to have a long-term horizon, which is a problem because our political system and political systems around the world have a horizon that only extends to the next election. And that is not conducive to making good climate decisions. AKA the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, which was politically expedient in my mind, in that it threw massive amounts of additional incentives at solar and wind, when solar and wind didn't need any additional incentives. They were doing just fine. It did throw $7 billion at hydrogen to build 7 hydrogen hubs, threw some money at the grid, but small pocket change compared to what's needed, and then, of course, environmental justice, which is another issue that I think gets in the way of achieving the ultimate objective, which is making sure we, have a planet that's inhabitable for future generations. But they make those decisions because those are politically expedient. No politician is ever going to get elected by saying, we're going to take a Manhattan Project approach and we're going to fix our electric grid, and it's going to take 20 years, but we're going to do it. That doesn't exactly resonate with the average voter, but that's exactly what we need to do.
Yeah, there's so many things that are promised that never turn out. And there's so many things that were important one day that lost their luster. Where's the IBM Selectric typewriter today? Where is the flip phone from Motorola today?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I'm watching Blacklist, which is a decade-old Netflix storyline, and I'm seeing the guys with a flip phone. I go, oh, this dates this particular movie. I know there's no iPhones yet in this movie.
Well, I can remember the first PC at an 8-inch floppy drive and had about 360K of memory. Today there's more power in a phone than was in the data centers 20 years ago. In an entire data center.
Yeah, and even the ship Apollo that went to the moon, not near as much computing power on that entire rocket ship that we have on our wrist in the Apple Watch.
Right.
Absolutely.
In that whole space area, there's an example of what happens when you don't invest, right? So we get a man to the moon in 1969, I think it was, and so we win the space race, and then we kind of stop investing in space exploration. We threw the space station up there, but until Elon Musk and a couple of other billionaires decided they were going to start advancing the technology to get reusable rockets and those kinds of things, which is what you need to make it cost effective. Really, we were stagnant for 20 years. That's kind of where that's where the grid's been. Innovation in the grid has been stagnant, and worse yet, the incentive structure for utility operators is contrary to innovation, right? The number one priority for someone that operates a utility is not to adopt the latest and greatest technology. It's to keep the lights on. And you do that with the safest technology, not necessarily the best technology. And even that has to change if we're going to modernize our grid.
So what would you call the safest and the best right now?
Well, safe is what they're doing, right? And I'm no expert on the electric grid. I'm learning as I go, but there's all kinds of grid enhancement technologies that can actually get more out of the existing infrastructure, new cabling, new transformers, those kinds of things, kind of mundane advices that have just made strides. But the challenge for a utility operator is if I take a new technology and I install it and it breaks and there's a blackout, there's going to be hell to pay, right? And so, what's my vested interest as a utility operator? I'm actually compensated on a cost plus basis by my capital expenditures. So I like to build big projects because I just mark them up and that's how I make money, right? But that's not conducive to evolving the grid at the kind of pace that it needs to evolve, because we need an intelligent grid. I mean, we're getting to the point in society where the grid as it was architected 50 years ago makes no sense anymore. But to get it to the next level requires innovation, requires a certain amount of risk, and requires an incentive structure that's going to reward utility operators for not only keeping the lights on, but progressing grid technology.
Let's talk about some of the failures that happen. Maybe some ways we can envision them not happening again. Remember the brownouts that happened during the heat waves in the summer times,
Sure.
Or when there was a big freeze. I remember Texas. And you don't think of Texas as a place where there's going to be brownouts. You think about it more in the Northeast or California. But Texas had a big brownout, power failures. And what happens in those places where the grid goes down?
Well, Texas is kind of a unique situation because ERCOT, which is the ISO that kind of runs the Texas grid, is an island. They're generally not attached to the other elements of the grid. And what happened was, I know there's factions in the world that like to blame it on renewable energy, but it was really the natural gas assets that failed because everything froze up and they couldn't deliver gas to the power plants, and the power plants were shutting off, right? And when things start shutting off in a grid, it's a bad thing because they need to have a constant load, and anything that creates variations in loads a problem. And they were very close to a catastrophic event that they would have required a great deal more effort to recover from. But the issue was they had climate change. All of a sudden they hit temperatures that they didn't build stuff to tolerate. They couldn't keep their power plants online, and they just started shutting them off one at a time to avoid a catastrophic failure. That's poor planning. It's a lack of long-term vision, which unfortunately in this country is a problem in the capitalist system, particularly in mostly in public companies who now manage themselves on 90-day cycles. I got to make the quarter, I got to make the analysts happy, so I got to do something to keep my stock price up. Well, that may be well and good for current stockholders. That is not a good long-term strategy. It was one of the reasons why I left the corporate world, because I don't make decisions based on the next 90 days. I make decisions based on the next 3 to 5, 10 years, because you need that kind of planning horizon in order to maximize the use of resources. Otherwise, you just waste time and effort.
So let's say you have an understanding of all these issues in the energy sector. You're a revenue growth strategist. That's what you do. What is your game plan, and what kind of things are you going to be looking to do to help people?
Well, I'm always looking to work with innovative companies that are looking to get to the next level, right? I've focused my career on small to medium-sized companies. I don't like big companies. They're too political, too bureaucratic. It's hard to affect change. Small to medium-sized companies, you can make it. One person can make an impact, and what I bring to these companies is 50 years of experience of working with growth companies. So I know how companies need to evolve internally and externally as they go from $1 million company to a $5 million company to a $50 million company. I also started my career in product management and marketing, and then have migrated into operational roles. So I understand all the components that make up an organization. And I can assist small companies in lots of different areas, whether it be product strategies and growth strategies, marketing strategies, operational efficiencies to reduce expenses. So I can wear a lot of hats effectively for a small company. And so I'm looking, I'm always on the lookout for someone in the clean tech space that's got some interesting technology, that may lack some expertise in an area, or just looking for some seasoned experience, and someone that knows how an emerging market evolves, because they evolve in similar ways. And like I said, I've been in several emerging markets, so I know how the whole climate space is going to evolve. I know what it's going to look like 10 years from now, because I've been through it several times.
It sounds like you're getting into some of the tried and true methods that you've employed throughout your career. Can you give us a couple of secrets that you call your secret sauce?
Yeah, secret sauce. Well, one is long-term planning. I mean, you can't plan around 90-day cycles. Sometimes you have to do things that are painful in the short term in order to achieve your long-term goals. For small companies, cash is king, right? Cash flow is everything. And so you really have to look at cash flow and how you're going to get to that next level and fund your operation. I've seen a lot of business plans in my life. They invariably have a hockey stick curve in them. In 5 years we're going to do this, or if we only get 1% of the market, that's not a way to do business planning. You have to have a product that the market wants. It all starts with the market and what people needs are, right? And you have to be able to provide something that's not available in the market, either something that's more innovative or more cost effective. And if you can't do that, then move on to the next thing, because you don't want to come out with, small companies can't come out with Me Too products and be successful. They have to have some advance on whether it's a technological advance or a price advantage. Either one can be effective. But the important thing is long-term planning. The other thing I've found is, it's it's not so much knowing the answers to questions that is important, because you can find somebody that can answer any question. The key to success is knowing what questions to ask.
There you go.
Right. And it's interesting. I've kind of my entire life. As a matter of fact, I wrote a book many years ago that was poorly written. It was my first effort, but in it was a chapter of accentuating the negative. We live in a society that loves to focus on happy thoughts, right? But for me, I like to focus on what could go wrong, because those are the things that are going to create a problem for you. You don't have to worry about things that are working. What you have to worry about are the things that aren't working, or the things that may not work if something happens, right? And so I'm always looking for, well, what if this happens? So what's the downside of this? Or what happens if we go here? What are the pitfalls? You want to try to anticipate those, and so you can preempt them, rather than get into a crisis management mode, which we are very skilled at doing in the United States. We love crises. Matter of fact, it's the only time we effectively make decisions, but that's the worst time to make a decision. You want to preempt crises. You don't want to have to manage through them.
Yeah, you're talking right down my alley when you talk about having a backup plan, knowing the successes come from not failing. I have a friend, Mohammed Sadiq, who's very successful, and he says he's got always solution A, B, and C, so that anytime A doesn't work and B doesn't work, he's always got C. And right. He's got a plan, and you're right on track with what I think is really critical for companies to stay in the market. A lot of them get in the market, but they don't stay.
Right. Contingency planning is critical, and you want to have those plans at the ready and not have to scramble to come up with a strategy. It's interesting, and that's one of the characteristics of an emerging market. What happens initially is you get lots of little companies and clever people and smart people, and they start a company, and they achieve a certain level of success. But many don't really operate particularly efficiently. But it doesn't affect them early on, because big companies don't get involved in emerging markets because they're simply not big enough for them to bother, right? As the markets grow, it begins to attract larger companies, and those smaller companies that are operating inefficiently begin to run into trouble, right? So what they did to get their company off the ground's no longer good enough, because the competition is escalating. Bigger companies are starting to come in. You start seeing a certain level of consolidation. Big companies will buy the best smaller companies to buy their way into the market rather than build their way. And so what happens with a lot of small companies is, hey, we got to $5 million doing it this way. We're going to keep on doing it this way. Oh, no, you're not. If you don't change the way you operate, I can guarantee you will not hit $100 million.
Yeah, the dental market is going exactly right now through that emerging market consolidation phase, So I understand it totally.
Yeah.
And every sector of business probably goes through the consolidation. Remember, the pharmacist went through that, the optometrist.
Sure.
Who knows what's next?
Right. Healthcare is gone through its consolidations and still going through its consolidations. It happens in every market as they mature. I mean, it's just a kind of a natural evolution. Sometimes the consolidation is good. Sometimes it doesn't work out so well. But it is what it is.
E3, do you have a company motto, slogan?
Yeah, I do, but I don't even remember what it is. I have to look at. I just put together my my post for today. Let me see what my slogan is. Advising Greentech companies to help maximize growth. Isn't that terrible? I can't even remember my own slogan.
But you did say that you help people maximize growth, and that turns an ear towards you. Why would somebody buy from you or your company?
Well, they'd retain me because they want to take their company to the next level. They're lacking some expertise that they need to augment on their management team, or they're smart enough to know that there's value in experience, and the only way you get that is over time, or you can retain it from someone like me or yourself, right? We've been around for a long time, and although we don't value age the way we should in this country, and this is going to sound a little bit self-serving. I mean, I'm in my 60s, but we ought to listen to our elders more. And I will admit that when I was 28, I thought I knew everything, and now that I'm 68 and look back, I realize I didn't know anything.
My favorite quote has always been from my mentor: if it's been done, it's probably possible. And those who haven't done it, sometimes they don't have a clue,
Right.
And they need guidance.
Right. And part of the value of someone like me and other consultants that are good at what at their craft, and consulting is no different than any other discipline. The world can be viewed as a bell curve, right? I mean, most people by definition are in the middle, they're average. You have your superstars at one end, the people that excel at things, and then you have your laggards. That was an old Welsh expression, but the laggards, the guys that just aren't getting it done for whatever reason. I mean, so consulting is the same way. You have your superstars, you have your people that don't know anything, and you have a lot of people in the middle. But one of the advantages of coming to someone like me is I can prevent a lot of mistakes from being happening, because I've seen so many different things. I've worked with companies of every shape and size in a dozen different industries. So I know where the pitfalls are. So rather than hit that, pitfall, I can help companies avoid it, maximize their resources, minimize their expenses, and just operate in a much more efficient fashion.
Are you working mostly in the energy sector right now? Is that your focus?
Yes, I'm working with a solar developer. I'm also mentoring a couple of companies. One has got an innovative hydrogen storage technology. Another has a innovative alternator technology for wind turbines that will increase the efficiency of wind turbines. I'm also working kind of secondarily with a company that's got some water purification technology. So I enjoy mentoring. I don't do it for the money. I do it just because I enjoy helping nascent companies, and they're in exciting areas, and you hope one of them hits and changes the world.
Do you have any specific marketing technique to identify these clients?
Well, it's part of my my social media is to gain visibility for my efforts to position myself as a subject matter expert in the field of renewable energy and climate change. So that's why my focus is on LinkedIn. So I post every day on LinkedIn. I do 3 short form videos on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. On Mondays and Fridays, I do a text post. So I'm posting 5 days a week, and they're all informational. I don't even have a call to action, although I need to kind of start sprucing those things up. But it's helped me expand my network and meet both people in the investment community as well as technologists that are starting companies, and those things will ultimately lead to to some engagements.
You sound a lot like me when we're talking, Tony. Is you have a business that started out as a hobby, it turned into a lucrative business when you align with things you're passionate about. Can you just find a product that you would offer to the companies that you want to do business with?
Well, if from E3, I am the product. I mean, what I usually do when I have my engagements are usually long-term engagements. I don't focus on project work. So I become an adjunct kind of member of the management team. And I'm unlike the McKinseys and the Bains of this world, who are wonderful at producing useless reports that sit on the shelf. I roll up my sleeves. Um, I'm not just a strategist, I'm a tactician as well. And I want to see the companies I work with succeed. And if that means, getting involved in the day to day, then so be it. So the product is me. And, I become, a member of the management team, and function in that fashion, both on the strategic side and the day-to-day operational side.
Okay, so you're a fractional COO type guy.
I'm a fractional CMO, COO, CEO. Yes.
Sounds like a winner to me. Um, do you have any particular platform that you guys use to deal with connectivity between the members of your team?
It depends on the client. So every client kind of, I've got clients that use Slack and clients that like Teams. It doesn't really matter to me. I'm having grown up in the technology world, even though I'm an old codger. I have no fear of technology. As a matter of fact, I taught myself how to do videos. I basically record and edit all my own videos. Now, the quality isn't, pristine, because I'm not going to spend hours making it, perfect, because the content's the king. But I taught myself how to do videos, how to post them, how to do carousels. So whatever a client has in terms of infrastructure and the way they want to communicate, I adapt to. Some companies like WhatsApp as a tool. It doesn't matter. I'm agnostic.
That's a good point. Usually people do use what the company they interface with has already. So let's talk generically. What are the most valuable aspects of the platform for communication within a company? What do you like best?
Well, I mean, what I use mostly is video, because I work remotely with clients, and video works great. I tell you the truth, I'm not big on all the integrated document sharing and all that stuff. I still like emails. I don't know. I think they're an effective way to communicate to people. I'm using text more and more because younger generations respond better to the text. But there's a lot of tools out there that workflow tools and decision processing tools that can be effective. Matter of fact, I met a gentleman named Mark Curtis along my travels, who started a company called HiveWise. And HiveWise is a platform to improve your decision-making process. It allows you to basically keep track of information, the flow of information, who's responsible. One of the benefits of it is when people leave, all that knowledge doesn't leave, right? That's, for bigger companies, that becomes a challenge. Joe left and Joe was the keeper of whatever. Now what do we do? Well, with a tool like HiveWise, and there's others, there's an archive of all of this that can be easily located. And I think that is the future of decision making for medium to larger size companies. For small emerging companies, startup companies, don't burden yourself with technology. I mean, you don't really need it. It all comes down in the early stages to blocking and tackling, the fundamentals. Don't worry about getting that flashy wide receiver. If your offensive line isn't protecting a quarterback, it ain't gonna matter. And in the early stages, you want to get your fundamentals right.
Is there something in the platforms that you never had that you always wanted, or your wish list?
Nah, I'm not even in a position to answer that question, because I make do with what I have. I'm still in a lot of ways old school. I, so, whatever tools you give me, I work with them. One of the advantages of having 50 years of experience is I don't necessarily need tools to operate efficiently.
I understand that point really well. When we go to Kenya to our missions and have a bag of tools, and it came to a point where I said to my team members, I said, I can take out any tooth with this one tool. So I was a dentist with a mission. I
There
could
you
do
go.
it.
Well, I'm like that with Excel. I can make Excel do anything I need it to do. Is it the most efficient tool? Is it the best tool? No, but I know how to use it, and so I basically make Excel do whatever I need it to do.
Yeah. Well, that's just called efficiency, brain efficiency. Only having to learn one tool to do everything.
Right, the old Einstein theory, right? He had five sets of clothes. They were all the same. He never had to make a decision on what he was going to wear in a given day.
I like it. So tell me today, Tony, what are you most grateful for?
Well, I when I saw that question, on the interview questions, I hearkened back to what my mother used to say all the time. You don't have anything if you don't have your health. And I think you and I, the older you get, the more you realize that, you could have $1 billion, but if you're not healthy, what good is it?
I think Steve Jobs would probably chime in on that one.
And there's a good example, right?
So
I'm very thankful for being in pretty darn good shape, for someone my age, and knock on wood, I hope that continues.
Absolutely.
And I'm thankful that I was born in the United States. When you look at the macro picture in the globe, and it's just chance, we could have been born anywhere, but we were lucky enough to be born in the greatest country the world has yet to see, at a time of unimaginable prosperity.
Yep. Well, that's so true. And there's 50 states, and you can subdivide that into different states, and each person's probably glad they're born in exactly where they're born. But I'm glad to be in Georgia, and you're glad to be in Connecticut.
Yeah, and I've lived in other places. I grew up in New York. I lived in California for many years. So I've enjoyed every location that I've been in.
Very good. Very good. So 20 years old, you're thinking about going into business. What advice are you giving yourself at that age?
Well, I wish I had given myself that advice. Well, I had a meteoric rise in technology before I abandoned the corporate world, but I would say patience. I was a bit impatient. I wanted to get to the top of the food chain, the corporate food chain, as fast as I could. At least that was my goal early on. And listen to people that have been around a while. You can learn a great deal from people that have been in the business world. And I had some really good mentors early in my corporate career that helped really lay the foundation for what I was able to do, which is basically go independent. Before the age of 30, I left the corporate world and became an independent consultant, and I've been primarily an independent consultant for most of my career. And that foundation was laid early by having some really good mentors and bosses that knew the ropes and understood how the world worked.
Excellent. Same here. I think the mentors created my life to be a lot better than my average friends that were in the same position as me back when we graduated dental school back in 1975. Taking mentors and learning from them propelled me. How about you? Did you have any particular person that spurred you on?
Well, Tom Meadows, who was one of my first bosses, and when I took my first job in product management, he helped me, learn the ropes and understand the politics of a corporation, which, until you get into one, you don't realize. You think, I thought the world was a meritocracy. You just do a good job and you'll get promoted and eventually, you'll be the CEO. That's not the way it works at all. And you have to understand how to navigate the culture and the politics of any organization.
Yeah, I can put my finger too on a number of people. Starting out with Harold Gelb in New York, over in Seattle, Washington, Bernie Jankelson. And in every area of my life that I wanted to grow, I chose mentors. And so whether it was IT business like right now, or whether it was social media, or whether it was in computerization, back in 1981, we got our first computer for our office. Everything had a person behind it that I followed, and I did what they did. And that's kind of the key to mentorship, is tagging on to people who you are doing what you want to do, right?
Yeah. And I'm trying to give back now, and I've joined a couple of mentorship organizations. Greentech Open is one, and I just recently joined another one, Global Mentor International, who focuses on mentoring refugees. And I'm excited to get my first mentee shortly.
So you're putting action to words. That's pretty good. You're not just walking the walk that's imaginary. You're doing the real thing.
Well, and that's critical, right? We're so much of the world are people telling you one thing and doing another, particularly in the political landscape. And this is not a partisan thing. It's on both sides, right? You really want to know what a person's about. Don't listen to what they say. Watch what they do.
Absolutely. Watch them on the Influencer Podcast, and you'll see day after day, week after week, we bring on movers and shakers and mentors of all types. And everybody who's been on the Influencer Podcast is already a mentor to hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands. So you join the ranks of people that I've interviewed that are doing wonderful things. And speaking of doing wonderful things, what do you want to be remembered for, Tony?
Well, when I read that question, I thought, what does it matter? I'm dead. But I want to be remembered for someone that had a high level of ethics and stood by those ethics and didn't compromise in order to make a buck. As I said, I walked away from the corporate world that I was a high flyer in at the age of 28. And I could have made a ton more money if I had, decided I would play the game, but I wasn't willing to play the game because the game isn't right. And I've tried to live my life, treat everybody fairly, and walk the walk. And that's what I'd like to be remembered for.
I like it. That really does mirror our motto for our company. We are the correction to the corruption.
I like that.
And we work in the IT business. So there's a lot going on in the IT business where they got you and they want to keep you paying that monthly amount that's exorbitant. So we're working on that same aspect of bringing power to the people through better technology at cheaper prices. How can we bring people to your business? How do we support you? Give us your link to your connections.
Well, yeah, there's a couple of ways. I have a website for my company, although I don't spend a lot of time keeping it up to date, but my contact information and my background's there. That's www.e3gogreen.com, all one word. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search Tony Paradiso and you'll find me. I encourage people to follow me and read my posts. Hopefully they can learn something about what's going on in renewable energy and climate change. I also have a YouTube channel. If you Google Tony Paradiso Consulting or enhancing the environment, you should find my YouTube page, and it's got, I don't know, probably 150 or so of my short form videos up there if you're entirely bored of watching the last piece of junk they put on streaming.
I'm a YouTube kind of guy, although I've got places on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. But yeah, YouTube is really a place where I put a lot of the videos that I do. So I encourage people to subscribe to your YouTube channels for those videos. And you do a LinkedIn every day too.
Yeah, no, yeah. Most of my posts are on LinkedIn. I do a couple of Facebook groups or environmental groups, but my focus is LinkedIn. So if you want to, if you're interested in seeing everything that I post, that's the place to do it.
Most up to date.
Yeah.
Good deal. So what would you say about your experience on the Influencers podcast today?
Well, it was fun. Of course, no one has to ask me twice for my opinion. So when you approached me, I thought, sure, I'll be happy to give you my opinion on stuff. So this was thoroughly enjoyable.
Well, we have some vision to be in the renewable energy market and green space. So it's not just that you came here by accident. We want to get a foundation in our entrepreneur group. This podcast particularly is heard around the world in 190 countries, and people listen. And they're looking for leadership, mentorship. They're wanting to know what the leaders of the world are thinking about different topics. And so thank you, Tony, for adding to the renewable energy experience that we've had. And at that, I want to give you the final word as we go into it. And when you're done, I'll come right back on the screen.
Well, my final word, it's really about leadership. And this doesn't have anything necessarily to do with renewable energy and climate change, but the way we select leaders throughout the world, it's got to change. The political process has become very distorted, where politicians no longer care about the countries they're supposed to be serving. They care more about power and being reelected. And we need to begin to focus more on how we select leaders and how the system is structured, because it's not structured for us to really solve problems anymore. And to progress as a country and as a society, we need to do a much better job of how we select our leaders and have a much longer term vision in terms of our decision-making process.
Excellent final comment. Thank you, Tony, for that. It's been a pleasure having you on the Influencer podcast today. And for those who are watching, if you're not familiar, this QR code up here is a link to my digital business card. And you can get connected to me to find out more about the Influencer podcast. Hear all the different 150 some odd podcasts we've done in the last year. You'll find Tony's put up there later on today. And you'll also find about our AI green technology. We're leading the world in development of AI technology for SaaS products, Tony.
Huh?
And much, much more than that. Like data centers, we're entering competition with AWS and Microsoft. We're in competition for other products like Zoom and Team with OConnect. So we're not backing down. We have a product to battle with Google Analytics, part 4. So everybody's got their good stuff, and we've got our good stuff. So I want to finish with one topic. This Bless is a product that we are bringing out that is our gift to the world. That means that we give away a lot of products, and this is one of them. It's a promotional platform for nonprofits and startups. So that if you have a startup company you want to get the word out on, you can get crowdfunding, you can get pay in advance type of marketing with Bless. And it's just a way for people that don't have resources to get resources to move forward. So you can go to OTRIM at my name, Dr. Bill W. You can log in and read about all these options, and you can also join for free, and you can use many products for free. So as we move forward, keep your eyes out for the On Passive company, and you will see some amazing things coming up. So we're just happy to be part of the growth industry that you're talking about. And we're glad to be moving into the energy sector that you're talking about. More to come on that topic.
Excellent. Well, I'll make sure I review all that material and pass it along to the companies that I work with.
Absolutely. So I want to say it's been a wonderful time with you here, Tony, and thank you, audience, for turning on and tuning in to the Influencer Podcast. Daylight savings time has come, and now we're getting an extra hour a day, so enjoy.
Appreciate the invitation, Dr. Williams.
You're